passion for punks and the ability to dig into the project has been very admirable. It's very analogous to I think like what Nifty and I's passion for Squiggles are, right? Like meaning you've owned an ape, a zombie, zero trait, most notably your PFP, right, which is the only one with 7 traits. You've even we dug into the Discord, and back in May 2020 in the punks Discord, you said you're interested to know how many punks have 5, 6, and 7 traits, right? So you were early on to something before traits were even a thing. Um, how do you attribute that? And were you the first one to pay attention? And why was it an observation that stood out to you, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, like, as I mentioned, like I'm all or nothing, right? Like, when I discover something interesting, that's like, piqued my interest a little bit. I love to get my hands dirty. Like, I love to get into the Discord. I love to like chat to the community members. I want to sort of like get that, that feedback from the community. What are their thoughts on things? And, one of my first messages in the punks Discord was, like, what's the rarest CryptoPunk? Like, if I'm all or nothing, I want the best, right? And a lot of people were mentioning this one particular punk, 8348, that had 7 traits, because there wasn't even a traits page at the time on CryptoPunk, so no one even knew, really paid attention to traits. And then of course like aliens as well. It was like basically like a toss up between the two. And I explored, the aliens. They were all being held in diamond hands, but I really loved the idea of owning a punk that no one else could get their hands on. For me, that was the all in basically, and it was just honestly, it was just great timing. At the time, Go West Bitcoin, he was the original owner of the 7 trait CryptoPunk, and many other incredible assets. I actually also bought my full set of autoglyphs from him as well. Thank you, Go West. But yeah, like it was also just good timing because like I think some people are sometimes a little bit too early as well, right? And then when you have been holding these bags for a long time and you haven't seen any movement, you do want to sort of, I guess, offload some of that risk as well. And I was back and forth with him. Not only did I love the 7 trait punk, but I loved how it looked. Like with 7 attributes, how everything, it was just so aesthetic. Like everything worked on it. From the top hat to the cigarette to the big beard. Like there's some like incredibly ugly 6 trait punks. Like they've got spots and squiggly hair, and there's traits crossing over other traits. It was nothing like that at all. Like it was like this really clean, beautiful punk, which is very hard to get with like, so many traits. That's why I also love like 1 trait punks, right? Because they're also incredibly beautiful to look at. It just highlights that one particular trait. So yeah, that's really was like my thinking, and along with that as well, so that was a record sale at the time, and then I think maybe like a week later, I broke that record by buying the albino female 0 trait as well. I think I paid 100 ETH for her. And people were losing their minds. Like, this guy's lost the plot. This is crazy. But like it was more like thinking like again, it goes back to I guess my technical skills from trading, right? Like when I look at a coin, I immediately want to look at the FTV, the market cap, volumes, all of these like these like indicators that can sort of like give you some sort of like indication to like where this could potentially go in the future if the fundamentals also hold up as well. And I thought that the punks at the time, they had such an incredible fundamental basis to them. They were very already quite culturally ingrained within the NFT space already. But the market cap for these things was tiny. It was I can't recall what it was, but it was like maybe like $5-10 million maybe. So it was tiny, and for me, I just saw like there was so much upside potential. If it was basically a bet on Web3, right? Like if Web3 ever takes off, punks are going with it. Like there's no like punks take off without Web3 going off, or Web3 going off without punks going off. Like they're going to shoot up together. And that's what we saw. As soon as like everyone, millions of people started entering the space. Along with that adoption curve, we also saw punks also rocket as well. So that thesis ended up actually playing out. To how I played it, and I still hold a considerable bag of punks even to this day. Because some of them are forever holds. Maybe I'll sell, Nate Alex's Choker Pilot back to him one day. He still begs me for it back. But yeah, like you can't beat those like, early memories of the space as well.
Do you remember what percentage of your portfolio was allocated to punks those days?
So at the time, I was very invested, mostly in punks, Axie Infinity. I was the largest land holder at one point. I also owned thousands of Axies, many Mystic Axies as well. I would say Axies and punks were like my two big bets, along with like my coin bets as well. And it was a little bit later on when I actually really got to understand generative art. Because I was seeing these autoglyphs at a 3 ETH floor and just thinking like, what is this QR code? Like this thing doesn't make sense to me at all. And then finally taking the time to learn about generative art and the beauty in code and how that can be expressed artistically. I was like, oh wow, that was like the mind blowing moment. And yeah, I basically again, Go West. He listed a full set for 150K. No one was biting. No one was going to pay 150K for a full set when the floor I think was only at like 3 ETH or 4 ETH or something at the time. So when I swooped in and grabbed that full set, again, people thought I was nuts, but I just loved the story behind them. Loved their place in history, and it obviously ended up playing out the way I wanted it to as well.